is, we don't know.
Right. You could put them, we don't know what those are. We don't know.
Are we getting close over there?
Yeah.
You guys ready?
Yes.
Yep. I have 6:01, so we got a bunch to go through tonight, so I think we'll go ahead and get rolling. Are we online? All good to go? All right, we'll call the meeting to order and start with the roll call.
Fillet.
Here.
Bomer.
Here?
Kriebel.
Here.
Colby.
Here.
Derlingson.
Here.
Bush.
Here.
Layton, I believe, will be here in a moment. Walsh.
He's here.
As you speak.
See, that was a moment. Layton.
Here.
Walsh. Not here. Riggs, not here. Almquist here. Poissant.
Here?
Hodges.
Here.
Sherwood. Here. All good?
All right, we are starting with some amendments to this agenda, apparently.
Not to the agenda. no.
Okay, so we have,
Did we have amendment though?
We had amendment to the
sent-
minutes.
yeah.
We switched up.
Okay,
the
so no
orders.
amendments.
It's the way it is under.
Okay.
No amendments, but we move to approval of the minutes for March 24th, 2025, and we need to amend that.
I believe there's an amendment needed for.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend the minutes from March 24, 2025, to state that Kenny Layton voted no on the food and beverage item.
So it's a motion, so we'll need a second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to amend the minutes from March 24th, 2025. Do we need a roll call or just call it?
Yeah, we'll do the roll call. And just
Okay.
to note, it was noted initially that it was a unanimous decision, so we're just clarifying that there was one no vote. Foley,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes?
Kriebel,
Yes.
Colby,
Yep.
Derlingson,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I then move to approve the minutes from our March 24, 2025 meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the amended minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Unscheduled citizens, is there anybody here to speak to something that is not on the agenda this evening? Okay. Anybody online?
No.
Okay. New business action items, we're all
We're all wondering.
so excited.
So the first item is the natural medicine ordinance, and we have one of our attorneys, Betsy Stewart, online.
I
Betsy,
think
can you hear
I
us?
think it is, yeah.
Yes, I can. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm ready to give my presentation if you want, or did you want to, open it and have me give it? However you will normally do it, I will step in when you're ready.
I would say we've seen the presentation, but I think a brief overview is in order. 'Cause we saw the same, is it a similar presentation to the work session, unless there's any changes? But I think a brief overview is in order.
Yeah, I'll give a brief overview just for the public since this is actually the public hearing on it. right?
Correct.
So, all right, so great. So as we just talked about, this will be pretty similar to what I gave a few weeks ago, but this is just a refresher and for the members of the public in attendance. Just as a background, Proposition 122 was a citizen-initiated and voter-adopted ballot measure in Colorado that legalized the use and cultivation of natural medicine under certain circumstances as an alternative medical treatment to traditional pharmaceuticals. So at the present time, natural medicine relates to the hallucinogenic compounds of psilocybin and psilocin found in psychedelic mushrooms. So the state laws regarding natural medicine are set forth in the Natural Medicine Code and the Natural Medicine Act and the Colorado Revised Statutes. And both the Colorado Department of Revenue, which handles the business licensing aspect, and the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agency, which licenses individual facilitators, have regulations as well. So a natural medicine business is an entity licensed by CDOR that includes healing centers, cultivation facilities, product manufacturers, or other licensed entities created by CDOR in the future, while a natural medicine healing center is a sewer licensed entity or natural medicine facilitators who are licensed by DORA dispense and supervise natural medicine services. And they also receive fairly extensive training as set forth in DORA's regulations, and they may or may not be medical care providers as well. So as we discussed last time, the city cannot prohibit a properly licensed facilitator from providing natural medicine services in a healing center. They can't prohibit the established operation of a business, and they can't adopt ordinances or regulations that are unreasonable or in conflict with the Natural Medicine Act or the Natural Medicine Code. However, the city can enact local regulations as they pertain to time, place, and manner. So last commission meeting, the main revision was to permit in the table of scheduled uses, it identifies the areas in which the natural medicine businesses and natural medicine healing centers can exist. And an old outdated version of the ordinance was accidentally included in your packet tonight. So when it comes time for you all to make a motion, I can say the two motions that need to exist. The first motion will need to be made to reflect that all natural medicine businesses and healing centers are subject to administrative review. And then we can do the motion to recommend submitting it to council. And then finally, council recently approved an emergency ordinance extending the temporary moratorium on natural medicine from July 7th to August 18th in order to permit the ordinance to go into effect if it's adopted on second reading before council on July 15th, 2025.
Okay. Is that it?
Question.
That's it.
Okay, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. At our work session, we talked about, and you mentioned the natural medicine healing centers being administrative review not permitted. And I notice on the table included in the packet that it still says P.
She just mentioned that that'll need to be included.
So we would be amending the table. Is that what I'm hearing you say? If we wanted.
Yes. Yes, Commissioner. I have two motions written out. The first motion will be a motion to amend the draft ordinance contained in today's packet by changing the table, and I have all the language. If you are, if somebody wants to make a motion to do that, I can go ahead and read that now. You could adopt it, and then vote. And then the second motion would be a motion to recommend approval.
Right.
And,
Yeah, I just guess I was under the impression that when it came back to us, it would have that change in it.
I was too. I'm not sure how that happened. It didn't make it, the correct version did not make it into the packet. I apologize for that.
So this is the correct version as far as you know. It just didn't get amended as we discussed.
Yes, the only amendment is to change it from a permitted use to an administrative review.
Okay.
Jeff?
Yeah, two questions. The lighting standard, is that consistent with the lighting standards for other businesses?
I haven't seen the latest language, but I know we had a conversation about it last time. Could you go to that specific language?
That's right. Yeah, paragraph 7 on page 14 of your packet also needs to be amended to remove the last sentence. It says all exterior lighting. That last sentence needs to be removed. I apologize. I'm not sure how this version got in the packet, but we can fix it.
Is there another version floating out there somewhere with these changes already?
Yes, there was one provided. It inadvertently didn't make it to the packet this evening.
Okay.
Is there anything else that's not included in this version that's in the final version?
No, those should be the only two things.
Second question, is the provision about odors consistent with other businesses? That they are not detectable beyond the property boundaries on which the facility is located? Because that's, if it is consistent, then we don't enforce the existing regulation.
Yeah, it's primarily on a complaint-driven basis. If it's reasonably to be understood that the use is not going to be emitting, unreasonable amount of odor. It's generally not been an issue that's come up, but certainly we do have nuisance regulations that should it actually happen, it can also always be called in
Okay,
as a complaint.
so I may be giving you a call.
No? Anybody else have questions?
The only other thing, and I think it's probably already in here, but was we had a large discussion about not relying on the state for the 1,000 feet. And by placing this in administrative review, that would allow staff to confirm that. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. We could look at the location in relation to
Okay.
other regulated uses.
Okay, thank you.
I had one question. We discussed hours of operation, and I think we landed on the 7 to 7 as the recommendation, and that's what's in the report. Is that to your memory as well?
Sounds familiar, but I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you for sure. I know we discussed it,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, the 7 to 7 was what had been presented, and I think, she gave us pretty good reasons why.
Yeah.
The length of time involved and, not having it any later than that, so I think we accepted that.
Yeah, I don't remember
7
that
to
one
7, yeah.
being
Right.
amended.
Okay, so I guess that's it, huh?
No other questions? Okay, is there anybody here to speak to this? Open this up to public comment. Anybody online?
There's no public comment.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion, public input portion, and move to commissioner discussion.
I think it's pretty much.
Is it ready?
Yep,
Yep.
okay. All right, so we need a couple of amendments to vote on. And can I combine those, staff, or do I need to make them separate amendments?
So I have two written out, and it'll be fine if you would like me to say the first motion, it makes the two amendments to the ordinance in the packet, and then the second motion would be,
On us.
I can
yeah.
make the motion.
I can do the second one as well if you want, and then
We're
somebody just
perfectly
adopts what I say.
able to do that, I think.
Okay, great. So the first motion would be whoever, adopts my motion as I stated. It would be, I make a motion to amend the draft ordinance regarding natural medicine contained in today's packet by removing the last sentence in Part 7, lighting of natural medicine businesses, and changing Table 16D, Schedule of Uses for natural medicine healing centers and natural medicine businesses other than healing centers from a permitted use to a use subject to administrative review in the respective columns.
I so move.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the amendment to the original motion, or not their motion, but to recommendation. Is that how we want to go with that? Any further discussion on that?
Nope.
Okay,
Roll call. Foley,
yes.
Homer,
Yes?
Kribel,
Yes,
Colby,
Yes.
Derwinson,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, then, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend that City Council approved the amended proposed text of the attached ordinance of the City of Salida, City Council amending Chapter 16 of the city's municipal code by amending Section 164190 regarding natural medicine and amending Section 164150D regarding the table of permitted uses plus the lighting, which was part of the amendment.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve a recommendation to City Council. Any further discussion? Okay,
Foley,
yes.
Homer,
Yes?
Kribel,
yes,
Colby,
Yes.
Derwinson,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Okay.
Good. May I actually just ask if the material that will be presented to council will reflect our changes?
Yes, it absolutely will.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move to the major impact review for the proposed Salida Quality Farms LLC Meadowlark Drive major subdivision.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here to present this item. Carolyn Poisson, Senior Planner, in case you didn't know. The applicant for this subdivision proposal is Salida Quality Farms LLC, represented by James L. Treat. They have submitted a complete application to subdivide the 43.02 acre property located off Meadowlark Drive between County Road 120 and 140, adjacent to the western edge of the Angel View subdivision, currently under development. The Salida Quality Farms LLC Meadowlark Drive annexation was approved in August of 2024. The property is zoned R3, and a majority of the properties to the north, south, and west remain in Chaffey County and are zoned residential, with the exception of properties south of County Road 120, which are zoned rural. The adjacent property to the east, as I mentioned, is the recently approved Angel View neighborhood subdivision and planned development. A majority of the properties to the east are within the city limits and are zoned R2 medium density residential or R3 high density residential. Next slide. A major subdivision is considered a project requiring major impact review, which must be reviewed by both Planning Commission and City Council at noticed public hearings. The commission makes a recommendation for approval with conditions, or denial of the request to City Council. The commission may also remand the application back to the applicant and staff for additional information or revision. Next slide. The request was presented at a joint work session with City Council on April 7th of this year. The main goal of the proposed subdivision is to accommodate the dedication of ownership of an 8-acre parcel to Places to Age, which will help expedite financing for the anticipated development of senior housing facilities on that parcel, as well as to secure dedication of 4 acres of public park and appropriate city public rights of way. Construction of the required public utilities is stipulated with this application. However, in accordance with the flexibility allowed for in the Memorandum of Understanding between the city and Places to Age, a full set of civil plans has not yet been submitted. A development plan and all associated public improvements will be brought to Planning Commission and to City Council for review, along with a subdivision improvement and inclusionary housing agreement. So this is mainly the subdivision of the land, and we do not have information about number of units and layout of the actual development parcels yet. Next slide. The subdivision includes a total of 4 development parcels, 2 public park parcels of the 4 acres, and 2 outlets for stormwater detention and the associated streets and utility rights of way. Next slide. The public improvements include a looped water main and sewer main extension coming off the utilities from the Angel View subdivision, an 8-foot shared use path connection along Tenderfoot and going down the new road to Poncha Boulevard is also provided. Street sections will be built to city standards and will be provided as shown here, with improvements adjacent to other development parcels being constructed when those parcels are developed. So these phasing of these streets and public improvements was discussed and approved by the Public Works Director. Next slide. The review standards for a subdivision include being in keeping with the goals of the comprehensive plan, which it is, meeting the district standards. In this case, is R3 is for the property, but as included in the annexation agreement, a 200-foot buffer of the property along the western edge adjacent to Meadowlark Estate subdivision will be constructed according to the R2 dimensional standards as called for in that agreement. All applicable city design standards will be required to be satisfied. The natural features here were classified as disturbed habitat, so nothing of extraordinary significance. Floodplains and highway noise are not applicable. And as I mentioned, future streets will be designed to city standards. The park trails and open space code requirements include land dedication and park development. The following conditions are recommended by the Director of Parks and Recreation. The proposed subdivision includes a park dedication of 4 acres as required by the annexation agreement. The first phase of development of the 4-acre park shall be required to be completed prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for any structure within the subdivision. The first phase of park improvements shall include the entire 4 acres and shall consist of, at a minimum, grading, irrigation, turf grass, park signage, 8-foot wide concrete shared use paths along the perimeter of the park, and street trees at the required intervals, a path connection to the park in Angelview neighborhood subdivision extending across the entire park, and 2 park benches and 2 shade trees near each bench. The first phase of park improvement shall satisfy requirements for the park dedication for the proposed 8-acre parcel to be owned by Places to Age. Future phases of park improvement shall be identified by the Director of Parks and Recreation to be consistent with the city's park development standards. Next slide. All other applicable city codes and design standards shall apply and are noted on the plat. Next slide. In terms of agency reviews, there were no concerns from police or fire. I mentioned Parks and Recreation. Next slide. Public Works has indicated that appropriate sizing of stormwater facilities will be needed and complete civil plans required with the SIA, which is typical. At annexation, it was identified that a traffic impact assessment may be needed to address future major development proposals that are significant traffic generators, and that would just be determined once we see how many units and what type of development would be proposed, so it's not required at this time. And as noted on the plat, school system development fees will need to be paid, and the schools have indicated they will accept fees in lieu. The next slide. Our utility providers had a couple of comments, and those comments will be addressed in the plat. Next slide. So at this time, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend City Council approve the proposed subdivision as it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and it is in keeping with the memorandum of understanding between the city and Places to Age. The subdivision will accommodate appropriate development to support the housing goals of the community. And the approval is recommended to be subject to the conditions. I won't read them all again. It's basically what I stated up above about the park. And then in addition to the information about the park, the construction documents for, oh, I did mention that. Okay, the last one relating to civil engineering plans for all other public right-of-way improvements as illustrated in the utility plan shall be submitted to the Director of Public Works for review and approval as part of the subdivision improvements agreement and prior to the issuance of any building permits in the subdivision. And one additional condition that I would like to have added, because it wasn't specifically in the staff report, has to do with the 200-foot buffer. So we will put a note on the plat that the portion of the property located within approximately 200 feet of the western boundary of the property where it abuts Meadowlark Estates subdivision shall be developed with a density no greater than and dimensional standards consistent with the current R2 zoning as stated in the annexation agreement, which was Resolution 2024-52. Just wanted to include that. With that, happy to take any questions that you have.
Who was responsible for developing this park?
It would be the developer of the first phase of the subdivision. So if we do a subdivision improvements agreement with, and Places to Age is doing the first phase of the development, and they're the owner of the property doing the development, then typically the subdivision improvement agreement is with that owner. And this obviously is broken into several phases, so there could end up being several subdivision improvement agreements.
So we have a nonprofit and we're saddling a nonprofit with a huge expense.
Well, we don't know who will actually develop the property. This is a subdivision agreement that will stand as a subdivision, excuse me, not an agreement. This is a subdivision that will stand as a land division. And so we have to have some conditions in place calling for development of the park. Otherwise, we will not have anything that calls for development of the park.
So we could make a recommendation that the park be developed by the city.
You can certainly recommend to city council whatever you like.
We could also make a change that said that the Places to Age would not bear that responsibility.
You can do whatever you like.
On that same topic, it's been proposed that Salida, the Places to Age pay for that, or the first developer, is that correct? I'm confused there.
As far as,
The fee pay the development of the park.
so we have 4 acres being dedicated. And the first phase, normally when you do a park this large, you want to, if it's going to be disturbed by construction at all, you want to grade it, seed it, irrigate it, that sort of thing. So that's what this is calling for, the first phase of development of the park, to be in place by the first developer of the subdivision, whoever that ends up being.
Right. So it's not necessarily the Places to Age is the first developer.
It's being associated with that 8-acre parcel in anticipation of it being the first development parcel. But if something else comes in totally different, we would probably revisit the whole process, frankly.
All right.
For instance, if all of a sudden we get a proposal for 200 units of residential on the other lots, then we would have to look at that with regard to how that would.
And the language right now says that very thing? The first developer pays?
It speaks to Places to Age at this point with the assumption that they're going to be the applicant, but it doesn't hold them to that because this is not a subdivision improvement agreement. This is just a subdivision dividing the land.
Yep.
But the conditions are being placed just so that we have some, it speaks to the development of the park, but you're free to amend that however you like. Those are just conditions recommended.
So, Mr. Chairman, so one of the, in addition to not strapping that baggage onto Places to Age, I also have an issue with, should this stand, the whole 4 acres being developed. So hypothetically, if Places to Age were to submit the first subdivision agreement plan, they would have to develop not only their 2 acres, but the 2 acres that is not owned by them, and I take issue with that.
Okay. Just to back up a little bit, 4 acres were stipulated in the annexation agreement. According to our code, if we don't have any units to calculate this by. If we were to take the maximum development potential of the 43 acres, it would be 15 acres of parkland. But instead, during the annexation, it was agreed to that a reasonable park acreage to be provided would be 4 acres, which was agreed to by Mr. Treat. Because we're securing ownership for places to age, and 2 acres have been, for lack of a better term, assigned to them as a dedication. The way it's stated on the plat, there's the dedication of ownership to Places to Age, and then Places to Age dedicates 2 acres, and then Jim Treat dedicates 2 acres. So it is
understand that.
stated that
But
way.
I understand that, but my point, you might have missed my point, was that whoever has the first subdivision improvement agreement would be saddled with developing both their 2 acres and the other, and the 2 acres that doesn't belong to them anymore.
It would depend on council's approval of the SAA.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
we'll just maybe have some discussion about
It's,
that
the
later.
difficulty with this is a very unusual process. We don't have a development
Sure.
plan, so we can't calculate units. We, we're kind of shooting in the dark here. We're going off of what the annexation agreement said.
Right.
And required.
Right.
And the fact that we ideally don't want just a piece of vacant land sitting there for who knows how long. So we're trying to address that, but you're free to
Okay,
do whatever you
thank
like.
you.
Yep.
So as I understand it, the reason we're here is because this will allow Places to Age to move forward with financing.
Right.
Correct.
Why does this allow Places to Age to move forward with, I will.
That would,
think the applicant
they can,
answer
they
that
can better
question.
explain that.
We'll be able to, yeah.
Seeing as this is, which land, seeing as the current land use code is still in effect, and let's just assume that between now and the time that Places to Age comes forward with a detailed development plan, the new land use code is in effect. Which land use code will govern this development?
If Places to Age or Mr. Treat or anybody else on this property come forth with a subdivision request after the new code is effective, then it'll be per the standards of the new code, with the exceptions of anything that have been agreed upon through the annexation agreement, or even through this subdivision process as well.
Understood. Thank you.
Along those lines, Mr. Chairman, the whole western edge by Meadow Lark Estates, is anyone pushing that issue? And I guess I was trying,
That's
can we
already been
simplify?
approved. It's in the annexation agreement approved by
through-
council.
yeah, that was
Yeah,
through-
that's kind of a
Okay,
done
well-
deal. Yep,
Okay,
just so you know.
leave it be.
So,
Yep.
now, the Parks and Rec Department made a statement that, the park provision may have to be revisited. Carolyn, you made a statement that per the annexation agreement, it was agreed that 4 acres would be sufficient. So,
It was not in its entirety. So the way, specifically in the annexation, it states that 4 acres shall be dedicated, but it does not preclude additional park dedication being required for future development.
okay, so if, for example, there were 400 units to be built on,
Somewhere else, yeah.
you could be that many, correct?
I'm sorry? There could easily be that many.
Yeah, all right, but
Yeah.
let's just, and 400 units would require an 8-acre park, I think, yes.
Under the current code.
Yeah, under the current code. So I guess my question then is, how does that get split between Places to Age and the tree
Yeah, if there's
development?
what we're trying to do here is nail down what Places to Age is going to be required to do. And that's what these conditions are trying to address, just in case something else comes along, okay? You can still amend these recommended conditions, and they can be tied to the subdivision improvement or not. You could say, we recommend there be no conditions, and council would approve with no conditions. And then we would get to a point where a development plan would come forward, presumably by Places to Age. We would look at what they're proposing and talk about the park, whatever, at that time. The public improvements in terms of the road and the utilities are pretty much not a lot of wiggle room on that, because those are related to fire and safety codes, public works, blah, blah, blah. So if there's another subdivision or development proposed, I don't know if, like we do this subdivision, there could be 2 or 3 more subdivisions beyond that of this first phase. So we're just trying to put the initial subdivision in place, so Places to Age has their dedication and their ownership, and give them a sense of what they would be required to do, so it's not a surprise as they're trying to figure out their financing. That's the goal.
Right, but the way this is written, they would be responsible for the entire 4 acres and not just their 2. And that's part of my problem. So we can work on that, but,
It
I think
says-
that, well,
It has to be dedicated before a certificate of occupancy is issued, right? It doesn't say who, right? Like, I mean, that's,
assuming that they came to.
Now we're getting into,
first. We're getting into discussion.
So
We'll hold that for
if
later.
there's any further questions, which we can get back to,
Yeah.
I
and-
think if we move on to the applicant, I think we're
Could I
going to
ask-
get some questions answered.
Sorry
Yep, yeah, go
to
ahead.
belabor this, but the one part I'm unclear on is what contribution is being accounted for in the 4 acres? How many units does that satisfy in the future? And maybe
It
that's the
doesn't
unclear part.
Just a agreed upon amount.
Because the new land use code says 12.5% of
Right,
land, whatever. The current code says maximum units, 0.02 per unit.
0.02 acres
My
per
question
unit.
is, what is being credited to the 4 acres?
We don't know. It's just what was approved at the annexation. There's no units assigned to it, literally. That's,
So at a later date, we're going to have a discussion about, the developer wants 400 units credited to that 4 acres, and, the city wants 3? I mean,
what,
I'm drawing
again,
extremes.
I know, I wish we had a development plan that had units on it, or that we had more clarity, but, again, the goal is to subdivide the land, so Places to Age has their dedication and their ownership, to try to address how the park would initially be developed. I will mention, Francie, I did just get a text from Diesel, who said he would be open to them doing just 2 acres. So as a first phase, so we would look at more phases in the park. And so if that helps appease,
We'll see what happens in
Yeah, because if you actually applied the development, the maximum density to their 8 acres, it is actually close to 3 acres. I think it was 2.79, but we know they're not going to develop to max density probably on that 8 acres. So, is what it is.
Yeah, we'll have a robust discussion, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and under so often, if the new land use code, if that were in effect today, I know it's not, would only require them to dedicate 1 acre to, so if we could, well, we can talk about that.
Yeah, let's get into
discussion.
that. Let's, thank you. And
Thanks,
we'll probably
Carol.
end up with more questions, but
Sure.
let's move on to the applicant.
Just remove
Yeah.
it, simple.
Good evening. I'm Cheryl Brown Kovacic, and I am representing Places to Age. We do have an MOU agreement with the city to help move this project of assisted living and memory care forward, because, Okay, because of being a nonprofit and trying to do a service to the community to provide something that we feel is a critical need in our community. We would like to make some comments addressing some of the same issues that you have. But I first wanted to note that the wrong utility plat was put in here. There is a turnaround in the utility plat that should not be there. I think there was some confusion there. And I also wanted to ask if you wanted me to update you on where we are in the project, or just go ahead and address my comments to the packet issues.
Unless people want to hear where you're at, I think what and I'm sure this is probably in your presentation, is kind of what your take on why we're doing it this way, essentially.
Okay, it sounds like one of your questions is why we are trying to do, I guess, what we might call a simple subdivision before we do have a development plan. And the reason that we are trying to do that is because we cannot have conveyance of our 8 acres until we are subdivided and separated from this 43 acres. And the reason that that is so critical to us is we are operating on grants that we get, donations from the community. When we go to apply for a grant, they want to see, one, we have community support, and second, that we have some financial stability, that we have some equity, that we have something that is there as a solid investment. And so the plan all along has been that this 10 acres would be our equity. And I think probably would be valued at about $1 million. And our project is probably a $30 million project. So it's still a drop in the bucket, but it is enough to give us credibility with banks and foundations and the state and the feds and so on. And so that is why we asked to do this process in the way that we are approaching it. Needless to say, we had no idea of what all these complications would be that are coming forward. So we are very appreciative to the city, to the staff, to be considering this, to try and work this through. We do know, we have been working with an architect, that we will have just below 60 acres. We're looking right now at our 60 units. Right now, we are looking specifically at 48 units that would be assisted living, and another 8 to 10 units that would be in memory care. So, rough numbers there, 60 units. So if you did the 0.02 against the 60 units, that would be 1.2 acres when we have given 2 acres. So there's lots of ways to look at this. We are very concerned about the Phase 1 staff recommendations, conditions that would be put on this subdivision. When we presented to all of you at the fire station in April, our discussions at that point were that maybe the first phase would be grading the land. Well, I mean, that's something that we could financially handle. Carolyn read off the whole list of things that are being required: the grading, the irrigation, the grass, the park signage, this concrete path all the way around it, and all the shade trees and everything. And so we actually asked John Dieslin to do an estimate for us. This is a detailed estimate Might I just brought 3 copies. I would like to give one to the staff and 2 to you all. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, please.
I'll start at this end.
Thank you.
So the costs of doing that are going to be just barely under $800,000. He gives a detailed line there. So at this point, we have given the city 2 of our acres worth $200,000. That leaves us with, instead of $1 million in equity that we can use for all these applications for loans and grants and so on, it gives us $800 in equity. But these first level improvements are going to cost $800. And I know, you all know, when you go to apply for a bank loan, you can show what you have in equity. You also have to show any legal obligations on the land. So now our equity is 0. That's exactly where we're at now with this, with these conditions, is we have 0 equity. I don't know how we would ever get a grant to cover this amount. If we had done a fee in lieu of, we didn't really even discuss that with the city. The city said we really need to have this one large park there. Well, I mean, we're doing all this because we're community-minded. So we said, you know, sure, we want to do the right thing for the community. You know, we will do this. And so if we had done a fee in lieu of at the, I think, $7,500 per unit, that would have cost us $450,000. And instead, already, what we're looking at here is an investment of $1 million, twice over what our fee in lieu would have been. The other thing that we're very concerned about is this attachment that says that this is just the first phase that we would have to do on these park developments. So, and the second phase, it basically says in this document, is whatever the director of Parks and Recs needs to be done. So I'm wondering, does that mean we put in all these grass and trees and paths and we develop this, and then the director of parks, I mean, I'm sure there are standards and things to look at, but I mean, could it be a pavilion with a whole bunch of picnic tables where you would have to rip out what we've already done? We would really like to see, you know, some plan and some public input and some negotiations that go with that, and know how that would affect us in the future. Because we were anticipating something along the line of just grading. Our board has not even seen that. We have 2 board members that are out of town, and it wasn't until this weekend that we realized that all these conditions were going to be placed on the subdivision. And I can't even say that we can move forward with this tonight without my board reviewing it and getting direction from my board about where we go next. So I think we would like to request of you, one, that we come back again, you know, after our board has reviewed this, and 2, that there be some consideration of the suggestion that we made at the April meeting. Our suggestion at the April meeting was this was all annexed into the city as a block of 43 acres. And for that 43 acres, there were 4 acres of park that were designated. So, I mean, to me, that's a whole thing that you look at the big picture. You take it all as one entity. And we would like to see that the park gets developed again by the entire entity, by all the developers that are going to be involved. There are 5 sections in the plat. We have one of them. So, you know, so you've got the land, you know, the land is there. And what we would like to request is that that be our contribution And that, going forward, because these other developers, their properties, you can see on here, they're not going to be adjacent to where the city has said they want the park to be. They wanted the park to be contiguous with the small park that Angel View is given, and the land all around it is owned by some private homes. So there's no way that these future developers could provide land. I mean, they could do some sort of a little small park or something on their property, but it could not be part of this major park. And so we would like their contribution to be the development. And that is one alternative that we would like to propose. We know you all have a great deal of expertise with this. I know this is probably a little bit different than what you've seen before, but we are very open to any other alternatives that you can think of that could be suggested to council. We're glad to give you time to think about that, to come back again to discuss it before it gets forwarded to council. Whatever direction you would like to take at this point, we would like, to work with you on this and to move forward in that way. And even if we have to postpone our scheduled meetings with council in order to get this worked out, we are happy to do that, to try and find some good solutions to this.
Questions?
Cheryl, when would you have a chance to meet with the board?
We will be meeting with the board on the 19th of this month. And like I said, we have 2 board members out of town right now. I could even try and pull them together like next week or something if necessary.
If we were to defer this to a date certain, is the 15-day requirement still there, or is that satisfied because it's a continuance?
We could continue it to whatever date certain.
Okay, and so our next scheduled meeting is
Most likely is going to be,
23rd.
23rd
Yeah.
is the very next. And then we'll probably have one, the general work session in July will probably become a regular session.
So theoretically, we could defer this until the 23rd, and you would be ready with a proposal at that time.
Right, and direction from my board, yes.
Or we could just remove that line and exempt you from development expenses.
That would be fantastic. Yes.
I do want to mention that Director of Parks and Recreation is on the meeting if you want to ask questions. And also that the conditions of the subdivision do not state places to age. They state the first phase of development.
Understand.
So just to be clear on that.
Understand.
Okay.
And just another point of clarification, so as Carolyn mentioned earlier, if this entire 43 acres had come in with a subdivision under any other circumstances for any other development, basically that there is not an MOU, it would be subject to the code as written, which says without the development plan, you assume the highest density and highest number of units possible via the code to determine the overall dedication. As Carolyn mentioned, that was 15 acres. Recognizing the situation and the agreement between the city and places that age and desiring to be able to move this forward, the determination at time of annexation was made to delineate the initial dedication of open space as part of this subdivision process and stated that it should be 4 acres. At the same time, there was a very clear clause that followed that said this does not, basically does not necessarily satisfy all of the open space requirements for the entire 43 acres. There may be additional dedication subject to future subdivisions or other land use applications. So I just wanted to state that for the record, so everybody's clear as to where that came from, and it's in the annexation agreement. So with that, though, yeah, I'll reiterate, Diesel Post is online if you have any questions for the Parks and Rec Director.
Is the proposed park at the border of your property?
There's a road or
It's
something
not
in
gonna,
between.
it's not gonna abut
Right.
anything else, any of the other,
This is where Angel View is.
Right.
Yeah.
A little section up here that's their .8 acres.
Sorry, Cheryl, can you grab your
Take the microphone
microphone?
with you.
And then.
Cheryl,
Can you grab the
take the microphone
microphone?
with you, please.
You can, usually you can carry it with you if you want to point
Okay,
to
just
the.
carry it, yeah.
Oh, just,
Yeah, there you
I'll
go.
just do this. So, so this is where Angel View is. And then these two pieces of property here are private homes. And Mr. Treat has an agreement with them that they will not have development right beside their home. And so that's this part. And then up here, this is another private piece of property here. And one of the things that Diesel told us when we were doing this is that the maintenance was very difficult for Parks and Recs on small little parks. And so their goal was to be able to efficiently have this, and because there's not much in the way of parks in this part of town, was to do this large park here. And so, so like I said, on both sides of it here are other private property, and then these are the lots over here that can go forward. Oh, the other thing I should mention is that Places to Age, this is our 8 acres right here. This section in here is one of the other subdivision sections. This is still owned by Mr. Treat and is a potential development for the future.
Oh,
And of course, it is, in some ways, I would consider it a prime property because it is right beside the park. And to be honest with you, I mean, some of that was done because of the expense of bringing the utilities all the way from Angel View, across the park, over to us. And we were hoping that a private developer maybe would do something there and help contribute to the costs of the utilities. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Has there been, I realize this is a little speculative, has there been any conversation with development or developers of the other properties?
I
all?
don't know. I don't know if Mr. Treat wants to answer that question.
I mean,
I don't know, yeah.
That's just far, far future, you know, we don't know, I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
We're doing
Is that mic hot?
Is that
by any chance?
microphone working?
We just have to get, so we can for sure get you on record.
say his name.
We're making every effort to make this a senior quality community and not rush into it with a lot of low-cost condos and so forth. It won't happen overnight. This is a long-range project. We want to do it the very best. Sometimes it takes time to do that. And we're willing to wait until it comes of age. The economics of the nation, we don't know. Maybe we could go into inflation or recession. It could happen. But we have to live with that, and we have to live with the cards we're dealt. But we're doing the very best we can in every way. And there have been some very dedicated people spending a lot of time and a lot of prayers trying to get there.
Mr. Treat, would it be okay if I asked you a question?
Sure.
First of all, I just want to state for the record that everyone appreciates your generosity in this donation. That is not in question. There's no, I mean, we all understand that. My question to you is, how do you feel, it's just your opinion, about what's being proposed here for the first developer, which could be Places of Age, to take on this large, costly park situation? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, obviously, they can afford to.
Right.
There has to be some lenience there. Passing through, hopefully the city can kick in a little and do some in lieu of trade of services, utilities, whatever. I think that would be a great thing on behalf of the city.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Your question made me think of something else that I wanted to mention to you. One of our challenges is to make our assisted living and memory care affordable to our county. Our county, I don't know, you guys might have a latest thing on this. I think the last I heard, our AMI was about 65,000 per year. You know, I mean, when you look at these facilities and what they cost, we have a portion of our population, and we have a large population over 65 years old. You know, we have people that can pay market rate, but we also have a large percentage of those people who fall in that middle range and even below that. And so we are doing everything that we can to try and minimize our debt, our upfront costs. Every time we take on more debt, that means people are going to have to pay more each month. And we want it to be as affordable as we can. We're trying to find ways to subsidize that middle income group, you know, a certain number of units that we know will make it more accessible to those people that may not be able to afford the market price. We are also doing a design build in our planning because that's more efficient to have someone who's the owner operator and the architect and the construction person sit down together and talk out what's the cheapest way of doing this, and will this suggestion by the architect, will that cost more money in the construction or not? We're doing everything we can think of to do good planning and work all that out so this is affordable to all of our county residents. So.
Any further questions?
I have a question for Diesel. Is he available to comment?
Yeah, he's online.
I'm here.
I would love to know a little bit more about how the 4 acres was determined to be adequate in this situation, and what do you see in the future, on the future parcel, if we are talking about 15 total acres potentially? I mean, do you see, how is that going to be accounted for, and, you know, does that meet the Parks Department's goals?
That is a good question. So really, we're just following standard practice for amount of open space in parks per person. And I know you guys know this, but the simplest way to explain it is to look at development and look at a concentration of people and how much green space they need to be able to walk their dogs, to have healthy interactions with open space. So at 43 acres, no, this is not the only green space that probably should be available to this community. If you look at the rest of the parcel, I would imagine, and we've been seeing this more and more, that the developer or developers of the rest of the parcels could theoretically be creating HOA-owned green spaces, where they manage their own spaces. So if it's half an acre, you know, imagine a green space in front of a U-shaped condo building or something like that. Like, I do consider that healthy, and at least an opportunity for green space interaction. That is not something that the city could or should be responsible for maintaining. So HOA owned small parklets, if you will, tiny, like a Chisholm Park kind of thought, are what I would envision a lot of the rest of this parcel to be, to leverage or to use as getting green space and access to healthy environment and environmental interaction with the residents. This larger parcel is more of a neighborhood or even regional park that we just don't have much opportunity for anymore. And I understand that the development requirements as they're written are a lot. And I'm torn, of course. I understand, or I don't know if many of you watched our most recent council meeting where I explained how we got into the situation where Cleora Park, as an undersized 1.2 acre park, is now expected to serve 2,000 individuals because of prior negotiated deals. And I just don't want to get us into that position again where through exchanges in land or changes in developers, that next thing we know, we are expected to serve 2,000 people with between the flour mill, the Confluent Park, Two Rivers, for something undersized. So I guess, to answer your question, I would think that there would be additional green space. I couldn't imagine the rest of this parcel being densely or even not so densely developed without more green space. And if that means that it's single residences with large lawns or more dense residents with communal spaces, those are things that will work out in the future. But this 4 acres is very much the minimum. I came into the process hoping for more, and have, of course, scaled back and considered the situation. And I'm even willing to consider the development requirements, but we just need to make sure that we don't find ourselves kind of on our heels in the development process. And the city does not. We have continually waived fees for various projects, and we are now at this point after Cleora Park where our fee in lieu fund will be depleted. And there is, if we continue to waive, we will not be able to develop things.
I don't want to get into a whole parks. I think I want to really stick to this development, please.
Yeah.
And thank you for your input.
So I would say what we have is where I'm at. I can negotiate or consider development requirements.
And that is what we really are interested in, is trying to negotiate these development requirements. I think it's probably pretty obvious that the finances of this are such that we may not be able to go forward with our project if we have to meet this extensive.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff, if that's okay.
Yeah.
My question for staff is, these things that the places to age might be able to negotiate, or, whittling out, how many additional acres might happen and all that. If this language about the first phase development was stricken from this proposal, and places to age was allowed to move forward, because the purpose of this is just setting the subdivision blocks, right?
Yep.
Would those things be able to be addressed then later on in the development planning stage?
I'm going to jump in here because we generally need a subdivision improvements agreement as part of the subdivision, and the two tend to be recorded at the same time. It's very poor form, bad practice to not have an agreement along with that at the time of recording. because you vest property rights without having any insurances regarding the actual development of improvements. So yes, the intention is obviously to get this property platted, but the portions of public improvements that would be required as part of the subdivision do need to get hammered out prior to the plat being recorded.
Okay, so follow-up question. If this language remained in the motion, the first phase of development of the 4-acre park shall be required to be completed prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for any structure within the subdivision, exempting places to age. Would that satisfy your requirement?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
If you left the language in there about the proposed subdivision, the first phase of development of the 4-acre park shall be required to be completed prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for any structure within the subdivision, exempting places to age.
I don't think anywhere it actually says that places to age is the one who's
I understand that,
for
but
it.
what I'm proposing is that we make sure that they never are.
You can certainly make that
By
recommendation.
exempting them from that language, keeping it in there so any other developer that came would be held to that requirement.
But Francie, that doesn't solve the financing problem.
Well, it does, because they would not bear
We wouldn't have to
responsibility,
pay
financial
the
responsibility.
$800,000.
Yeah, okay.
But they would still have the block so that they could, the subdivision could move forward, getting grants and monies because they would have that settled. And it seems to me that with the remaining 43 acres, there would be many opportunities for Parks and Recreation to have additional, we've zoned most of this R3, high density. So I anticipate there will be much more open space available other than this 4 acres. And I certainly, personally, maybe we're getting into commissioner comments.
We are.
But I don't want to
we're gonna be
saddle
able to get
them
into
with
this.
that.
Let's move on. I'm sure there's people that would like to speak to this evening. So thank you, Cheryl. I'm
Thanks,
sure
Cheryl.
we'll probably come up with some more questions, but I'd like to go ahead and open it up to the public hearing.
Yeah.
Who's here to speak to this? Bill?
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm the civil engineer, Bill Hussey. I'm the civil engineer for Places to Age. And I just wanted to try to attach some numbers to this discussion that I had time to think about while I was sitting there. The 4-acre park under your new code would cover 32 acres. 4% is 12.5% on 32. And we have about 16 acres in our phase 1. So we're dedicating enough parkland for a development of twice the size in the new code. And I realize we're not in the new code, but the current code, as you know, is wacky. At a maximum R3 density build out, you end up dedicating 1/3 of your land as parkland, which is enough said about that. 12.5% still puts us on par with Savannah, Georgia. The Oglethorpe plan that repeats there is 12.5% open space, is a ton of open space. So in support of Cheryl, I'd just like to suggest that the dedication itself of the parkland is the contribution for this phase, that we be exempted from any improvements, that also the developer of, for now it's all Jim's land, but specifically the 2.5 acres here that's fronting the park, I'd like to request that you also exempt that from the park improvement requirements, because on top of the $800,000 park problem, we have a $2 million infrastructure problem, part of which is caused because of the location of the park. Like Cheryl said, we have to get utilities, instead of developing where the utilities are, which is the typical good strategy, we have to get them past this park here, and a water main also here. So 2 places it really hits us. So that's the goal of these lots, is to chip into the $2 million infrastructure problem. And yeah, finally, I'd just like to thank Jim again for the land and the city for the flexibility on this development process.
You have a question for Bill?
Yeah, just I'll wait for discussion.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Anybody else?
Anybody else?
There's nobody online.
Okay. Close public.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and move to discussion.
Okay, now, well, it's fresh in my mind, you know, taking the city's perspective and listening to what Mr. Treat has said, you know, it may be a long time before any of the other development were to happen. So if we exempt places to age, we could have, you know, 4 acres of weeds sitting there for a very long period of time,
That's right.
Yeah.
unless the city wished to.
Bill, can I ask you a question just to confirm on the utilities where that you got it'll be on your dollar to connect that
Yeah, it's on phase one's
basically
dollar.
across that park to
Yes.
yes.
Right.
Are those utilities for future phases as well?
Well, they would connect.
Yeah, future phases. I mean, with the exception of like a phase could happen up here that wouldn't necessarily need this, but
Right.
it does make it easier in terms of the water main, basically. Even if you developed up here, you could make a little mini loop that is a loop, but sort of isn't. You know, the water quality isn't as good.
But you do need to do the connected, correct, for the water.
Yeah, we need to connect in 2 places for the water.
Yeah.
Right.
No matter what. You know, if there was, if development,
Yeah.
if we were looking at putting a street here, you know, we're probably either asking the city through its park easement to bring utilities here, you know, a much shorter way.
And will basically that public park benefit from those connections?
Will the public park benefit from which connections?
Basically your water line and sewer line and power.
Yeah, to have
So you're
amenities in a park of this size, yes. Yeah, you're gonna need water and sewer. Well, I have the microphone, if I may. It's a valid concern that this becomes a weed patch, like First and D or something. And if this could be fenced during construction to be undisturbed, that's a super valid concern that all staging should happen in the construction area of phase 1.
But that would be part of the development plan, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But,
But if it gives you any comfort at this point that could be written into a
Right.
Development plan.
Okay, just to reiterate though, we're just having this whole discussion assuming places to age is the first phase, but there is no other phasing plan, but there could be, but there's economic concerns, et cetera, et cetera. Is that right?
Right.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. Places to age, it sounds like can't really move forward with this hanging around their neck.
I think it's pretty clear we're here just to deal with this subdivision, right? And, you know, when you start to look at the math and the fact that 4 acres are being dedicated for parkland, I feel that that's sufficient in
I do
terms
too.
of dollars.
I agree.
And we know there's going to be additional development, and there'll be additional either fees or dedication to support that. And there's no plan for the park either. So I don't think money is going down the rabbit hole here.
So do we in fact know that there will be more public parks dedicated
Well, there has to
here?
be, because there's 32 acres to be developed.
All right,
so
but
the new, if this 4 acres, well, once it's split, I guess we're under the new code, there's 32 acres remaining.
Right.
So 12.5% of 32 is, help me here.
3.875. 4 point something acres.
3.8.
3 point, so there would,
Another
under the
4
new
acres,
code, there would be another 4 acres dedicated.
Right.
Right.
Well, no, I think the 4 acres satisfies 32
No.
acres.
Oh, no.
No,
Other
once it's
32.
split, you then have a parcel which,
I understand that, but what my point is, the annexation agreement, when it was put in place, 4 acres was deemed sufficient. And so, to Bill's point, when he stood up, he said, if I understood you correctly, under the new code, which we're about to adopt, 4 acres would satisfy 32 acres of developable land. So we'd actually be looking at 12.5% of 13 additional acres.
It'd be, if, looking at it that way, it would be 1.38
Right,
acres.
right.
But I just wonder, seeing as this is, they are now separate parcels, and wouldn't those separate parcels have to meet the requirement of the code, each parcel?
I think Gift's getting at kind of what my question
Yeah.
was. Like, I agree we're gonna get more area, but like, we only get one shot at this. We want to get it in the right place and so it does the right thing. And are we gonna have a place where we can do that?
Well, I look at it as you have 2 shots. This is the first shot, and it needs to be looked at just as a proposal in front of us as a subdivision. That's what we're looking at.
Right,
The rest, we don't know.
right.
We can talk about it, but we're not sure.
Right.
We know there's going to be a new code. So I think that the way it's stated in the recommendation just needs to be changed to exempt them from any further improvement other than
Well, that the
rough
land-
grading or.
The land dedication satisfies their,
Exactly.
their financial
That would be my
responsibility. I agree.
Yeah, I
Anybody
agree
else?
too.
So but we're saying that because we support the mission, right? Like, we try not, I think we try not to waive requirements because we have them for a reason. But in this case,
We have a nonprofit
yeah.
who's trying to do something really
I'm
good
just
for
trying to
the
be clear about
community.
that. 'Cause
No, I
in the past,
agree.
we've been sticklers. There are
Sure.
rules for things.
Sure.
But
Sure, no.
that's why we're doing this time.
Yeah, well,
Or
yes,
It's also the amount of acres is higher.
higher than they would have been required by, with the 60 units.
Right. So that's the other part of it.
They've made a
There's been
substantial contribution.
yes, that's a good way to say it, a substantial contribution to the park and making it contiguous to Angel View is also,
Right. It
causing.
benefits the city, and I get what Diesel's saying, and I understand, I did listen to the meeting, the council meeting. I do understand that, you can't give away everything and have anything left. But I also think that this is a pretty unique and important proposition, and if there's going to be any chance for them to move forward, that we should try to be part of the solution and not obstructing them from their mission. That's my opinion. I don't know if you guys agree.
I agree. Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, Ken.
I agree with you, Francie. I think the only thing I think might warrant a little bit of clarification is the future, how we're accounting that 4 acres towards the whole development.
I think that's part of the development plan.
If I could, I think just to clarify that, I'd like to actually read the language from the annexation agreement.
Okay.
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay.
It says, a minimum of 4 acres of parks and open space generally consistent with the location and configuration adjacent to Angel View subdivision as shown on the concept plan submitted with the annexation application shall be dedicated prior to development of the parcel. Such dedication shall not preclude any requirements for additional park and open space dedication or fees in lieu associated with future development
Right.
of the property. So in other words,
Doors open.
yes,
Definitely.
It doesn't talk about development, it just talks about dedication.
it's talking about dedication, right? I will say there is an additional clause in the agreement that does get a little bit more specific to development. It does say a network of shared use paths located approximately as illustrated in the concept plans submitted with the annexation application connecting CR 120, Meadowlark Drive, CR 140, and Angel View subdivision shall be constructed to meet city standards with the development of the public street network upon subdivision of the property. So that does assume development of the shared use paths as part of this development overall. So I think it leaves the door open for what could be required for dedication in future phases. Specifies that specific development of these shared use paths is required. I think it does come down, I'll editorialize here a second, it does come down to the future of development of the park. As you heard Diesel mention earlier, finances are not there to develop parks that were dedicated several years ago. So absolutely, there could be a space here, open space, that goes undeveloped for quite some time if there's not some sort of phasing or developer who is identified to have to do that development. The money's just not there.
Sure,
on the part of the
and,
state.
you know, what I was suggesting was then leaving that language in there, but just exempting places to age specifically because of the substantial contribution they've made in dedicating the land to the city.
Yep, and, you know, staff is fine with that recommendation. The only thing
It
we
leaves
would
the door
add to
open
that.
for other developers to have to come and do that as well. if
Yes,
they-
and
yeah.
the thing that we'd like to point out, that if for some reason, we always have to consider the possibility that the development does not happen. Right. Then whoever does potentially develop that parcel, which could end up being an organization other than Places to Age, we'd need to consider that possibility into the language there. So
Sure,
you
well, I
wanna
mean,
make
if
sure
we're
that it's
specifically
separate from-
exempting places to age, it wouldn't, I would think, wouldn't apply to another entity that might take over that land.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down a little bit to the language around the phasing, you know, as far as when it actually gets done, because if the development of the park or whatever development is required is attached to phase one, and phase one is done by Places to Age, then you're writing out any possibility for anybody to do it, right?
I see what you mean. So by saying the first phase, we want to change that.
I think you need to look at that specific
What language would you recommend we change that to? Maybe you could just take that out and say the development of the 4-acre park shall be required to be completed. You know, I don't know,
Prior to any development
Right.
done by anyone other than.
places to age.
Yeah, I mean, that's something along the lines of,
Yeah. Is Nina on the line?
Betsy is still on.
Or Betsy?
Yes, I'm still here.
Would you like to give us some proposed language on this change that we're contemplating?
Maybe, can I interject before we get to that specific language? And I think one of the issues that we're facing is that there is no formal concept for this park. And that would be a very important step in developing any kind of phase or phase development of the park, is developing the concept of the park. Relatively cheap, working with landscape architects and having some type of concept that we could then phase. And right now, we're all kind of speculating on what it could be. I've heard pergolas and shade structures and things like that. So one of the things that would help me do my job is to be able to leverage whatever we can. And maybe it's not through Places to Age, maybe it's through another fee and lieu somewhere else, maybe even not with this subdivision or the development, but to specifically find funds to develop a concept.
Diesel, this is Francie. So what if we just took out that language entirely? And that bullet point would just simply read, the proposed subdivision includes a public park dedication of a minimum of 4 acres as required by the annexation agreement. Period.
I think he's asking for.
If the legal team feels that then if the land were to change hands and Places to Age weren't the developers, that other requirements would be put in place, I think I would be okay with that. But I think both Places to Age and the entire development as a whole are really looking for what this park could look like so that we can develop it.
Sure, but
Phase it
Diesel,
in.
wouldn't that also be considered in the development phase? We don't have a development plan. So would that not be
Correct,
part
yes.
of the development plan that would be submitted and come back to us?
Yes, and I would
So that's-
consider this, and thank you for watching the previous meetings.
You're welcome.
I would consider this a much better situation than we were in with
Okay.
other previous developments where we did not consider that.
And so as-
the land, great, thank you.
As part of the development plan then, Bill, that would mean that when we see it again, that would give Places to Age a chance to talk to, negotiate, fess out anything else that they need to fess out with this park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm satisfied with that.
I would be careful in how much, we need a lot of public input into this park, and, public input more than just Places to Age. All of the surrounding neighborhoods and if not the entire city. So I wouldn't want to necessarily just put Places to Age on the hook for helping
So if we
develop the
remove it, we
concept.
throw it back to you and you figure it out. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I don't like anything being my sole responsibility.
Well, as the Parks and Recreation Director, I'm wondering if this would not be in your best interest to be in charge of figuring this out.
Yes, I agree. I believe that through our previous master plans, future master plans, and public input, we will be able to figure this out.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
I'm ready to make a motion. We can
Question, question. So I think where we're going is that we're going to exempt Places to
No,
Age.
we're just going to take that out.
But
Completely.
doesn't that exempt Places to Age?
It just takes it out of the equation.
The development of the park?
Yeah, it just takes the first phase of development part out of the equation. If we just took that second sentence out completely.
So how
And
do
we
we
could
guarantee
also-
we're going to get a park?
It's also in the second
We
bullet.
get the land.
I'm sorry?
It's also in the second bullet.
Yeah.
So I think you need to revise the first bullet. And so it says that the dedication of the park meets the
Yeah,
requirements of park
Yeah.
dedication for the 8-acre parcel to be owned by Places to Age.
Yeah.
I don't think you need something else to Diesel's point about how the concept plan's going to get developed.
Yeah.
That could replace the first phase.
The other thing I'm concerned about
I like
is
that.
if Places to Age isn't able to make a place to age. We've got this, we want to make sure that if if they end up having to sell whatever this property to a for-profit organization, we want to make sure that we haven't exempted that for-profit organization from the requirement to
Yeah,
yeah. Aaron,
participate in the development of this park.
yeah.
can you restate what you
Agreed.
said so we can, on that first bullet, what you said that was brilliant?
Well, I think the first bullet, you keep the first sentence.
Yep.
You just strike the
Strike
second
the rest,
sentence.
right?
Then you take the last sentence of the second bullet and you change it a little, so you say the
First.
dedication of the park satisfies the requirements for Places to Age.
Hang on.
The park dedication.
That's your first bullet, right? The proposed subdivision has a park dedication as required by the annexation agreement. That dedication meets Places to Age's requirement.
Basically.
So, but
Then you've got to deal with the first phase. Then you have to deal with the development of the park. And you got to put it on the other, or saying, I think we're putting it on the other future developers
Yeah, but where are we doing that?
in the next bullet. But what I thought I heard Diesel say is like, I don't know, maybe this isn't the park that you want there.
Right.
So it probably needs to be modified to say like a concept plan in the first phase is completed prior to any.
Could I make a suggestion, just
Certainly.
hearing everything, having been a park planner for 35 years?
Good.
What I'm hearing Diesel say is he needs a concept plan.
Yeah.
What I would suggest, and maybe if Places to Age is amenable, that with the subdivision improvement agreement, which will be negotiated with the first phase of development, presumably associated with Places to Age, that a concept plan for the park be prepared and submitted for city approval. And then you can, if you don't want to talk about development, I don't know that,
I just
development
don't think
would
they should
come
have to be struck,
further
yeah.
with further development, but if you want to assign something specifically to them that's not super costly, like Diesel mentioned, that would at least get us started, and it would be specific to Places to Age. Now, how we address all the other phases of park development would have to be figured out in other separate subdivision improvement agreements as we go.
Or development improvement agreements. I'll
Or development
make the
improvement, yeah.
distinction because
So
we'll
the
need
third-
the subdivision improvement agreement for this subdivision.
Yeah.
The
But
third,
subsequent development may require a development improvement agreement as well.
the third bullet, if you took out future phases and just said park improvements shall be identified by the Director of Parks and Rec to be consistent with the city's park development standards. Just take out the words future phases. Aaron, what do you think about that? Third bullet point?
I guess in the concept plan, but I think we want to make sure that there's somewhere, I mean, I think city council is going to want to know who's going to pay for it. So how, I think it needs to be, seems like this is the time where you dictate how it gets funded.
I think you're right
Just
here.
leave it blank.
You know, when you start to read through here and you're looking at all the different bullet points, if you want to keep this as simple as possible, you just go to the proposed subdivision includes the dedication of a minimum of 4 acres, and then you don't put anything else in there.
Strike everything
Strike
else.
it all out of there. Don't require any plans. Just make it clear that, you know, to me, whether it's places to age or whoever's developing this, that 4 acres set aside is adequate.
For the 8 acres.
For the 8
Yeah.
acres.
I
It's
agree.
just that, and then the annexation agreement covers the remainder, if I
Is that right?
understood you correctly.
No, it only covers the multi-use paths.
I don't understand that.
So the annexation agreement requires that the shared use paths be constructed
Oh, okay.
as part of the other public improvements within the major subdivision.
It doesn't require
So-
anything for the park.
So when,
It doesn't require.
as I
anything
read
for
it,
the
so
park.
when the roads are built in,
But that's okay.
or here, you
But
put in the
that's
shared
okay,
use
though.
paths. I think the question that remains is just simply determining if it's not going to be places to age that is going to build out the
Anything.
park, right? Fine, if that is the recommendation, that's absolutely fine. But we do need to attach some sort of certainty to who is going to be required. If it is your recommendation that the city do it, whether there's funding for it or not, then I encourage you to make that recommendation. If you think that that should be put on subsequent developers
Future.
of the property, then I recommend that you make that recommendation.
And so when you say subsequent developers, are you suggesting?
Or not even subsequent, could be a private developer, to Gift's point, of the places to age property if it is sold to a private
I'm just not
developer.
really sure how to say
Whoever
that.
may
Do
be.
we need to continue this and come back with some language that meets with what we feel
we've
like
come
we
so
want
far.
to do?
Yeah.
It'll be
Or-
hard for us to climb. I mean, I could sit here and say,
I mean,
you know, that-
I'm good with just keeping that, with what Brian said, just keeping that first bullet, striking the next three, and keeping the civil engineering plans, you know.
And if
bullet.
we want to make a recommendation that the, you know, it's to address Bill's point, the cost of future improvement shall be borne by the city or future developments, developers, as simple as that.
But how do you?
Not including places to age.
I would strongly recommend against putting it on the city, as our code states that
Right.
developers are responsible for dedication and development. It would be another can kicked.
So what if,
Well, we
so
could
what if we
recommend it,
just go back to my original thought, and that was to keep it like it is, but to exempt places to age from development expenses, allowing for the fact that the park dedication meets their financial requirement?
Could you go to the first, Kristen, could you go to the first page?
I do like
While
that.
while
I'm
he
really
speaks to that,
concerned the city
or
is gonna
figures that
lose
out,
it.
I
I think we
agree.
should
I think
recommend that, you know, and then let the city council deal with it, you know, if they want to make a
Just leave
further
it like it is
adjustment
and
to that.
exempt
But that
them.
would be our recommendation.
Yeah, it won't show
And then take out all the other improvement.
Well, I think we could leave it. We would only add to that first bullet that, or add another bullet that just says, places to age is exempt from park development expenses based on the feeling that the land dedication satisfies their requirement.
The other challenge, I'm sorry to throw this in there, but I'm reading it right now closely. In it, that second sentence of the first bullet says the first phase of development of the 4-acre park shall be required to be completed prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
You need to
Right.
strike that.
So in other words,
That
if
has-
Places to Age is the one developing
developing.
it, and they're not on the hook for building out the park, somebody needs to do it before there's a CO. So we do need to address that language.
Yeah, that,
I would allow them
Can we-
to secure some funding for that. If we can get them through, and then that would be part of what they're asking for grants.
No, I don't like that.
Can we just add,
What
can we just exclude Places to Age from this first one and leave it as is?
Well, what
Any-
they were
And the
saying,
second
though, in
one,
the
too.
second bullet point, there's some language about the first phase of public improvement shall include the site.
Or you can also
Um,
excluding.
Yeah, I mean, those are still all in place, or
Right.
maybe we add a bullet that says,
I think we add a bullet.
Places to Age
Is exempt from.
is exempt from
park
the
development
requirement
Improvements.
to develop the park.
Diesel, what do you think a concept,
Concept of a plan.
no, what do you think the concept would cost roughly?
$50,000.
That's too much.
The issue with the concept,
And
though,
take time.
personally, is not, Diesel, if I heard you correctly, you need a lot of community input, you need a lot of planning for this park, like this is a citywide park, and I think if this hinges on a concept that's developed with kind of TBD deadline in the future, I don't think that should be a hurdle for Places to Age to,
Can
you know,
can we
to move
send this back to staff to just reword this? We've all heard our feedback. We're supportive generally of the concept. I think we're concerned that the city get what they're looking for, park land, ultimately developed at some point.
I think I would like to make a motion before we do that and see if we can get through it. Hang on a minute.
I would just like to point out, I'm amiable to that motion. And I would just ask that as future developments come online with similar special circumstances, we recognize that we are going to need to apply fee in lieu to even make this park's concept plan possible.
I understand.
well, at what point do we recommend that Salida institute a property tax that can provide a budget?
Oh,
for
you're
things?
getting in the weeds now. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, are you? Mr. Chairman, are you ready for a motion? I'm going to give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
Okay, and of course, we can amend it if my colleagues have other thoughts. So I would like to move to recommend the city council approve the Salida Quality Farms LLC Meadowlark Drive subdivision as proposed and amended as it meets the intent of the applicable review standards for a subdivision, subject to the conditions as recommended by staff above, and in addition, an additional recommendation that Places to Age shall be exempt from park development expenses as the park dedication meets the Places to Age requirement, period. Is there a second first and we can discuss?
That was a motion.
There's a
We can
motion.
have Discussion if we have.
Second and then discuss.
Okay, I'll second
All
it.
right.
All right,
But
further discussion.
then we still have the problem if the park, as this thing is written, Places to Age can't get a CO if the city or whoever's developing the park. So we need a second amendment,
Okay.
which would say that all development other than Places to Age, this park must be done by all other development other than that done by Places to Age in order to get a CO.
Yeah,
Or
or
just to say-
COs for anything other than
Other than
Places to
Places
Age.
to Age.
Yeah, thanks for
Yes.
picking up on that. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah.
COs for any, what is it, any development other than? Any
Structure within the
developer?
subdivision other than that.
Say again, I'm sorry.
For any structure within the subdivision other than that on the Places to Age parcel.
They should get a credit.
But it's not just the parcel, it's places to age, right? Because they could sell it.
entity.
So Carolyn, if I heard you right, it would be a,
Talking about the 8 acres here.
pardon?
I would stipulate that we should restrict it to that 8-acre parcel, assuming that it is under places to age ownership, which is what will happen with the subdivision.
Okay, so certificate of occupancies for any structure within the subdivision, other than places, within the 8-acre subdivision? Within the 8-acre within the subdivision, other than places to age?
I think you need to attach it to places to age, not the parcel.
I would just say within any occupancy for any structure within the subdivision other than those developed by places to age.
I think that's where you're headed.
And that, keep in mind, that will allow any of their market rate units and anything to also be exempt.
Okay, so I will accept that as a friendly amendment to the amendment? Or do we need to vote on that
It's part of the,
separately?
why can't we just make that part of
Okay,
the amendment?
I think we
we can just make that part of the motion?
Jim wants to say something to you.
May I, just a moment, please? Our 4 acres is in excess of the 8-acre percentages. If we apply that over percentage for the rest of the subdivision, we're very close to breaking even.
Understand.
See what I mean?
Yeah, thank you.
So we would add to the motion a bullet point that says COs for any structure within the subdivision other than those developed by places to age would be held to these requirements, right?
Doesn't work.
Right.
Staff, does that make sense? I just worry we're on the fly here.
Well,
Like, I want to see it.
It
get
seems
it.
a little on the fly to me.
what we'll do is we'll put it together and we should run it by our legal also. Certainly if we make, if it goes
And
to
I would add,
council.
subject to our legal guidance in wording the motion.
The two main points that we've heard, though, thus far as part of this motion, I know it hasn't been voted on yet, is that places to age be exempted from additional park development costs, and that the development of the park be completed prior to COs for any structures other than those
Right.
as a part of the places to
Yes,
age project.
exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
Those are the two main points, and we will capture that with legal guidance in
I
there.
call the question.
Okay.
All right, so that's the motion.
Are we still voting on this?
We're going to vote. Yeah.
Second,
We haven't seconded that motion yet.
Yeah.
I second that motion.
No, he just recapped it.
That was the
They'll
recap of the
rework.
That was
amendments.
a recap.
And legal will wordsmith it if necessary to protect us. Okay.
So, excuse me, just a moment. When we're saying for me to wordsmith, there's been so many amendments here and it is on the fly, I agree. Are you talking about that we're going to continue this to the June 23rd?
No.
No, we're going to
Certain-
vote on this. We have a motion on the table
And a second.
and a second. And we've amended it to say that places to age shall be exempt from park development expenses as the land dedication meets the park, meets the requirement. And we've added that as a bullet, and we've added a second bullet saying certificate of occupancies for any structure within the subdivision other than those developed by places to age would be held to these requirements.
And staff can work with you,
Staff can work with you
Betsy,
to
on the
clean it up.
specific language for the recommendation to city council.
Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
very much for your input.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
We are.
Okay. Foley,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes.
Kriebel,
Yes.
Colby,
Yes.
Derwingson,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And I would like to ask, when you present this to council, that you let them know that we had a unanimous vote, please.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you all.
Okay, can we take a quick break?
Do we need a 5-minute recess?
Yeah,
for-
we do.
Before we move on?
to you later.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
See you, Cheryl.
Right, no, I totally agree with that.
Ready to start again?
Okay.
Recording
Oh,
in
gosh, we
progress.
Cleared the room.
Is anybody here to represent anybody on this?
Thank you, Mr. Treat. Sweet.
Thank you all for sticking with it. I don't know, do we have to like officially open it back up or anything like that?
No, we'll just move on
Okay.
to recommendation on proposed Granzella City of and
Annexation.
Salida annexation.
Yep. We had a couple of people back here that I think were going to speak to that, to this one.
I know, so I think they were signed up and everything.
And
then
they
they're
left,
like, we're
right.
out here.
Was it?
Okay.
So if we go to the next slide, a little bit of property information here, showing a vicinity map. So to our commissioners, this project was shown in the concept review at our last City Council and Planning Commission joint work session. I know that there was a few of you missing, so for your sake and also for the sake of the public hearing, we'll make sure to cover all our bases this evening. This image here is showing some site context. The proposed annexation is behind the new fire station and includes all three of these yellow tracks. If we go to the next slide, a little bit more property information specifically on the history of the project. So this request is to annex the three properties. They total to about 8.2 acres. The city of Salida received a land banking grant through the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, also known as CHAFA, to purchase tracts 3 and 4 from the Granzellas, which is shown here in green. The two city parcels are shown in green, which will support a future senior affordable housing project, as well as a public park, which we'll get into a little bit later. The Senior Affordable Housing Project will be funded through the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, also known as LIHTC. The sales agreement stipulated that the city would bring forward an annexation and zoning request for the properties soon after the completion of the sale. Next slide, please. So this is pretty basic boilerplate information. The state mandated annexation process will be followed and the findings of fact are met. So this is, I just want to caveat this by saying the current proposal that we're discussing at this moment is purely for annexation of the property. Right. This is just provided for some context. Specifically in this slide, we're looking at the future street layout, so those items shown in white. The completed sales agreement includes the since completed dedication of Scott Street, which allows access to the properties as well as provides enhanced access to the fire station. The annexation plat also includes a dedication of a 70-foot wide tract right-of-way north of tract 3, running in the east-west direction. This will be named Nelson Way. And also a 15-foot stormwater dedication south of tract 1. River Drive will be further connected through those two future subdivision properties to the north at the time of future application, so not at this time. So recommended conditions, if we go to the next slide, we have several conditions as part of the annexation approval. And I'm going to try to summarize them for us here. I know you guys were all provided with this packet in advance. So items 1 and 2, at the time of development, application, and building permit, inclusionary housing requirements will be met, as well as applicable fees will be paid. The remainder of these conditions are all per the sales agreement, so kind of reiterating them here for the purpose of the annexation agreement. Number 3, open space requirements for all tracts will be met with the provision of the public park. Number 4, curb, gutter, and sidewalk improvements along Nelson Way will be required at time of development. Next slide, please. Number 5, a remaining portion of River Drive will be dedicated at a future development. That was the one going through the future subdivision parcel. Number 6, the city agrees to take the lead on improvements for Scott Street. And number 7, Nelson Way improvement costs will be shared. The first to develop will incur the costs, and the second to develop will pay back 50% of those costs as stipulated here. So that's an overview of those conditions. And then on the last slide here, we have recommended motion. Staff does recommend that Planning Commission recommend the approval of this annexation, but at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just have a clarification on the road situations, because it's, I mean, there's behind the fire station, there's that bike path that connects Scott Street to Lower Scott Street. So I'm a little bit, maybe it's because I can't really see it. Can you point on the map to where the roads will be improved, please?
I'll help out with this one.
Okay.
So the plan, the bike path that you talk about
Yeah.
runs right here on
Right.
the western edge of the Scott Street extension. So the entire area in white here represents the new right-of-way.
Okay.
That was dedicated as part of the sale of the property. The future road is intended to actually do kind of a bend to meet up with this portion of Scott Street. So it's going to bend here and come down through here. It will likely involve the relocation of a few electrical poles that are in the right-of-way
And the
currently.
lower part by the park, will that be improved by the city as well?
Down here?
Yeah, or is that already?
In all likelihood, it will be improved on this side of the street
Right.
as part of this development.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
This side of the street, I believe it's being improved being improved by the school district, but I'd have to double check
Okay,
on that one.
all right, just curious, thank you.
So I had a question if I could. So this deal is kind of the win-win where no matter who pays for it, you get reimbursed half of it, right? So it's really a 50-50 split. That's what all that language says there.
That's correct.
And if it just isn't developed in 10 years, then this is no mas, no more. This agreement goes away.
That's correct.
The annexation agreement goes away in 10 years?
Just the cost
The
reimbursement.
cost-sharing
Cost-sharing,
agreement goes
right.
away. That's the objective, right?
Yes, and that is just for the utilities to note. So
Right.
sewer and water in the road, the
Right.
cost of that.
Okay.
What's the status of LIHTC funding and the big bad bill?
Oh, boy.
I don't know, honestly. Not certain. We are hoping to get a RFP out for a LIHTC developer in the near future, with the hope of being able to get an application in for the next round, 9% LIHTC.
It's just really super that we have that,
But we just don't know, we don't know the future of
Yeah.
LIHTC at this moment.
right?
I would assume, though, given the fact that it's based off of tax credits in the
Yeah.
market, that it's unlikely to be affected, is
Yeah.
what I have heard in the
Hopefully.
past.
Yeah.
But
So if it does go away, it would still be some kind of senior housing or affordable housing?
we
or
would just have to
something.
look at other
The rate,
funding
yeah.
sources for it. Yep.
I have no problem with this
Yeah,
annexation.
no problem.
I think it's pretty clear,
Thank you.
right?
Pretty straightforward.
Yep. Ready for a motion?
Sure.
Okay. I hereby make a motion to recommend City Council approve the proposed Granzella City of Salida annexation as it meets the findings of fact for annexation, subject to specific conditions as outlined below, and we've just gone through those. I will briefly, number one, the owners will meet inclusionary housing. Number two, they pay the building permit applicable fees per code. Public open space requirements have been satisfied. Owner developer of Tract 1 will be required to cut the curb and gutter. And number 5, required to connect and dedicate the undedicated portion of the River Drive at the time of development. City agrees to coordinate and take the lead on the Scott Street from Illinois Avenue. And the owners of Tract 1 and successor assigns agree to provide cost reimbursements for the city, as we've discussed.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to recommend approval of this annexation. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Foley,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes?
Kriebel,
Yes.
Colby,
Yes.
Derwingson,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Woo!
All right.
That's quick.
All right, let's move on to recommendation on proposed Granzella City of Salida zoning.
Thank you. So I'm going to spare you guys going through some of that information again, but again, this is for the same project, those same parcels. Our first slide here, we're showing the future land use map. The current properties show as R3, which is higher efficiency residential neighborhoods, as well as parks and open space. Onto the next slide again, we are showing this conceptual plan once again for context only, not for the purposes of the specific zoning at the moment. But the park areas shown here to the left in green, and the affordable senior project, senior living development is shown in purple. I do want to caveat also by saying that the exact split of this is to be determined at time of development. We're just kind of showing it conceptually here. No current development is planned for Tract 1. This is the Granzella's property still, and it will remain as such until they develop it in the future. They have indicated that they are interested in doing some type of residential neighborhood. So staff does feel like an R2 medium density residential zoning for that property would be appropriate. And the R3 for tracks 3 and 4 as high density residential makes sense to get that density in the senior affordable project. So a little bit more on property information. The zoning map is shown here. The site is currently surrounded by C1 commercial and other residential neighborhoods, R3 as well as R4 manufactured housing residential. And I kind of already went through most of the thoughts behind the zoning, and staff believes that the proposed zoning is aligned with the goals of the comprehensive plan to provide a range of housing types and densities on these properties. So our last slide shows the recommended motion, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Before we get into that, I realized I forgot to open public.
Yeah, for the last one.
For the last. Was there, obviously nobody here, was there anybody online that wanted to speak to the annexation?
Nobody
Okay.
here?
Okay.
Okay, so did you open it for this one?
Oh, well, not yet, because we're still in. Yeah. So questions for staff?
Right.
How did we settle on R2 for the one parcel as opposed to R3?
This is a little bit supported by other parts of the future land use map, as well as the comprehensive plan's request for a range of housing types. The future land use map does show R2 zone district along most of the river properties.
I guess I have a little trouble putting R2 between R4 and R3 and commercial. It seems inconsistent with, what we've tried to promote, and that is, I mean, if it was R2, R3, R4, I would have less problem with it, but to put, an R4, and then an R2, and then an R3, and then the commercial or C1, I have a little trouble with that. I think it should be R3.
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's a mixed-use area personally, and, I think the variety of housing, variety is good.
Variety of housing in R3 as well. It's just you have fewer, shorter setbacks and more density.
Let's do the formalities. It sounds like you can
Okay.
get right to discussion,
Right.
So if there's no further technical questions, we'll move on and open the public hearing. I assume there's no one.
No one online?
Great. Go for it. Commissioner discussion.
Okay, all right, well, I just said it.
I'll leave it to Francie to say concisely what I was trying to convey, but I will say I'm kind of like,
We're just like,
but I guess I'm kind of rethinking what I said, because the unique part of this property is it's river frontage, right?
Right.
And do we want R3 on river frontage? And maybe
why wouldn't we?
Well, we have R4 on Riverfront. Right next to it, we have R3. Anything you can see in that picture is either on river is either R3 or R4.
Okay, one comment on that note. My understanding is that R3 at the lower right is kind of it's in its actual use, it's more R2, if you ask me.
Well, some of it's R4
Right.
in its use.
It was traditionally.
No, I mean, now it's,
not anymore.
it's single homes on multiple lots.
But you can put, if I'm not mistaken, you can have a single-family home in R3.
course.
You can. I will note that with the new code,
Yeah.
where this may come in is the minimum densities. And I believe, I can speak for the Granzellas, their intent with the R2 zoning was to create a single-family neighborhood. The minimum zoning as proposed in the R3 has a maximum lot size of 11,250 square feet. So in other words, should that go through, no lot would be able to be bigger than that and developed. And I think their intention was to have a mix, to your point, Commissioner Colby, a mix of lot sizes that were both lower than that and higher than that as far as the lot size, so.
But you can do that with zoning R3 too.
But, and if you look at,
River Ridge.
if you look at where most R2 is now, there are very few lots that are larger than 11,000. I mean, I own one of the biggest, I've got it's 4 city lots essentially. And, yeah, I call that spot zoning.
I do too. I mean, I appreciate what the Granzellas are trying to do, and I think having a mix of housing styles is really good, but I think you remember when Bill Hussey stood before us? I can't remember what the development was, but he had the best explanation of why he was promoting R3 instead of R2, and it had to do with the setbacks and the parking, and he showed us pictures of how if it was R2, you'd have to be forced to put the parking in the front.
Yeah, that's for multifamily, the coverage and all.
I mean, I guess, when I look at this, I just see that it would be not consistent, and spot zoning, as, Giff said, but I mean, you have mobile homes, you have R4. And then you have R3. I just can't see it R2. I don't know that that's a good precedent for us to get in.
How many units are we talking about really in
We don't know.
4.6 acres?
Well, we don't know.
Yeah,
And I also think that, when you talk about, do you want riverfront property to be R3? I mean, we have riverfront property right now in the city that's multifamily, that's condos, I don't know that it would necessarily be detrimental to have it be R3.
So the way I look at it is the applicant is requesting of us the zoning of R2 and R3. The applicant. It's not staff recommendation, it's the applicant and the staff agreeing to
Two
that.
applicants. There's 2 applicants.
Yeah, it's the Granzellas for their tract 1
their
and the
tract.
city for tract 3 and tract 4.
But it's still the applicants are requesting that be
But does that
designated
mean we
R2.
need to do it?
What's that?
Does that mean that we just do what people request of us?
No, but I think that's a consideration here
It's a
in terms of one, compliance with the code, first of all. You're speculating, in my opinion, of spot zoning. That's your opinion, and you're subject to that, and that's great. But here we got a situation where this is compliant, with the code. It's compliant with the comp plan.
I don't think it is. That's my point. I don't think it is.
Asked that, and it was in concurrence with our plan, right? Our comp plan.
With the comp plan. Yeah, that's.
I mean, why is it consistent with a comp plan? The comp plan is to
Continue existing patterns of development.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And the existing pattern there is R3 and R4.
The future land use if you look at the FLUM, what does the FLUM say? Higher density, right?
Right. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
I will note to Kristen's point earlier, the FLUM does identify R2 for the properties along the river, the vast majority of the properties along the river. In this particular case, the property along the river is shown as parks. That was an initial thought that that would be where it is, but as it turned out with the sale and the opportunity, the park has been moved inland. So you can sort of extrapolate, I think, from there that the intention was to continue the riverfront development as R2. Of course, you cannot zone a single tract separately, though. You have to zone it one thing, and then you could potentially come back after subdivision and rezone other portions of it, but one zoning does need to be applied.
I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me to have it be R2. Seems, as Aaron said, inconsistent with, first of all, our stated goal of having higher density. Second of all, the flow of the zones. I mean, it's R4, R2, R3, C1. We're supposed to be discouraging that, I thought, and having higher density.
I agree, but I think with the riverfront and in there, like, I don't think, to me, I'll vote yes either way, I think, but like, I'm not going to die on a hill here.
The park on the river.
Yeah, but I kind of get the R2, if that's what if they want, some single family along the river. I don't know that, I mean, that's going to be,
It's sandwiched. You got the river, you got the mobile
Mr.
home.
Chairman, I'd like to make a
You got the
recommendation.
senior property, you got the,
If
the
it-
high-tech property
If
there.
it helps, and I'll mention this now because you're going to hear about it on June 18th anyways, at our next land use code meeting. Staff is going to go ahead, per our conversation from a few months ago about the R4 lots, the individually owned R4
Good.
lots as opposed to the mobile home lots. We are going to recommend that those be rezoned to R3. The property immediately to the north of the Granzella's property is one of those lots or one of those areas rather, that are all individually owned mobile home lots. So that's going to be part of the R3 recommendation.
But it's the same, in
rezoning.
my mind, it's the same, I mean, if you think about it, from a standpoint of what's there, you have these small lots that are, going to be R3 then, and you can, I support that, I think that's, we talked about that. And then you have the park and the LIHTC project, and then you have R3 on this side. I mean, I just don't see that being an R2 neighborhood. I'm really struggling with that.
I think the way to resolve this is that I will propose an amendment, and the amendment can be voted up or down.
Okay.
And then we can vote on the, depending on, we either vote on the
Well, make the
amend-
motion and put the zone you want in it,
yeah.
and then we'll vote on that.
What's the amendment?
I mean, I'll just say real quick,
The amendment would be to strike the Scott Street property R2 and make it R3.
Make all of it R3.
Make it all R3.
Kenny, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just say, I'm sympathetic to I think the wishes, and I'm also kind of not that opposed to the R2 if that's what the applicant goes to. So, I mean, that's how my voting will reflect.
I just don't see this as being something that is driven by what the applicant wants.
Yeah,
I think it should be driven by what we know to be what we believe, what we've talked about, what we've professed to do, and that is consistent with the zones and higher density. So, to turn this on what the applicant wants.
I think my only pushback on that is that it's their property. They wish to do it R2. It's not really, to me, that's sort of overreach to say, no, you have to do R3.
Well,
and they can argue
purview.
in their code, in the comp plan.
So if I want to,
Yeah, so if
if I want to rezone my lot to R3, I mean, because I want to do it, I should get it? No, because it makes no
not how it
sense there.
works.
Well, the difference is they're
that's
not
not the
already in
same
the
scenario.
city.
Well, it could be.
This is the annexation process.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I mean, this is all part of the annexation process. I mean, they're not currently in the city.
Right.
So I think
right?
that's reflected in their
Well,
application.
I'd like to see
I
it
don't
be
know.
R3. I just think that feels and
Okay,
sounds and
can I
seems
make a
right.
motion then?
Yeah, go
Please,
for it.
yeah.
I move to recommend City Council approve the proposed zoning of the Granzella City of Salida properties as proposed to be annexed. The 507 Scott Street property as R3 High Density Residential Zone District and the 547 Scott Street property as R3 High Density Residential Zone District as the requests meet the applicable review standards.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
So that was the amendment, correct?
No, that's the
You amend-
motion.
Well, do we need to amend?
Because Giff made an amendment.
Sorry, I
No,
went
he
to
was
amend
talking
first.
about making an amendment. He never
Yeah,
made it.
it never
Didn't
got
actually make one.
seconded.
Okay, yeah, so, and then that was the amended motion.
Yes.
Correct. Both of them are 3.
Yes,
Correct.
Correct, all right,
and we'll see where we go.
yes. Okay, and second, we did have a
We have
second.
a motion
I
and a
seconded
second. Any further discussion? Go for it.
Foley,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes,
Kriebel,
Yes.
Colby,
No,
Derwingson,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Layton.
no.
Motion passes 252.
all right.
That's the
Didn't
amended.
take an
I
hour and a
think we
half.
need to- Got right to the
Good.
point. Straight up, straight up. Straight up.
Okay.
Okay, and then.
All right.
All right, good work, kids.
Updates? You want to,
No update.
commissioner comments? Please.
Just a few
Meetings.
quick updates. Just a reminder, we've got meeting next Wednesday, second public meetings at the Steam Plant Annex.
Okay,
We will
this is-
be, it kind of depends on who shows up. If we have everybody who's already been there to meetings before, we'll probably just kind of quickly skip ahead and.
Is this
and-
for the land use code?
The land use code,
Oh,
yes.
okay,
Land use
sorry, I
code and
didn't
zoning
have
map,
that.
sorry.
Okay.
It's at 5:30 to 7:30. And we'll be going over the feedback that we've received on the land use code via the survey, as well as the zoning map via the Conveo tool that we've been using. And talk about the recommendations that we'll be making for the next draft. We hope to have an updated version of the zoning map in time for that. I think we will. And that will be posted on the website. I've already made a few changes to the webpage for the land use code, so you can go there to check it out. The land use code itself, there will not be a new draft probably until at earliest the end of this month. But then at that point, we plan to get in the interim a little bit more feedback from the Land Use Advisory Committee on certain more controversial issues, if you will, and provide an opportunity for the public to comment on the next draft of the code. And then we'll take those comments, potentially come up with an additional draft and plan to bring that to you all for review at the beginning of August. So that's our plan right now. We do have a meeting on June 23rd, so just a couple of weeks from now. And then we are planning on making the work session in July into a regular meeting. I know that Greg, myself, possibly some others will be gone for the second meeting in July. So we'll probably not be
That
having
would be
that
the
one at this point. But
8th, or the 8th of
Yes.
July?
8th of July,
Okay.
yep. And we'll confirm
Okay,
the regular meeting date in July with you all, but that's
Okay.
kind of the way it's looking at the moment. Yeah, and then kind of depends on how many meetings it takes for this body to review the land use code and provide a recommendation as to when it goes to council, but we're hoping that sometime in September that'll go to council.
That would be awesome.
So, yeah, I'll stop there.
And the parking lot at D and First is
Filled up in the first 2
widely
days.
applauded.
Yeah, temporary. We're actually getting.
Hopefully, it's
Yeah, hopefully
Yeah,
temporary.
well, we're getting a sign made to further reinforce the fact that it is temporary and the future home.
Don't get used to it.
First
Right.
days.
Don't get too comfortable here.
Yeah, don't get too comfortable, right. It's obvious the parking comes in handy
Right.
around here, especially for the visitors this time of year.
Well, and you'd think that it would eliminate a lot of the parking on D Street and some of the others, and it didn't.
It doesn't seem to.
filled it
No,
right
I don't
up.
know where, they're coming out of the woodwork. People
They
are getting
are?
their cars out of garages and parking them out there and
Right,
stuff.
right.
Chapman's paradox.
It's going to be interesting over in the next couple of years as some of the properties that we currently lease likely become unavailable to us.
Right, we'll have to figure that out. huh?
By the Safeway?
Safeway we own, but virtually every other location we do not own for parking lots.
The end of F Street.
I mean, we
End of
tried-
F Street, First Street, backside of Second Street. Yeah, there's a lot of, behind the Green Cat, there's a parking lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all
okay to me.
privately owned and leased, and we pay gobs of money.
Someone asked me, and I think it's privately owned, and so there's nothing we can do, but you know that the parcel
The city doesn't own.
that's at Sackett and E, next to the brick
Yep,
building that's, used to be,
Yeah, we-
it used to be for the Palace Hotel, they used to let them do
Yeah.
it, now it's just nothing happening.
every so often, we talk to the owner, and
Right,
been shot down
Right.
numerous times, but, you
right.
know,
Is that owned by the people who own the place next door, the brick place? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think so.
Yep.
They have a little history with FIBARC.
Yeah, I think they're from Texas.
Speaking of, happy FIBARC, everybody.
Happy
Happy
February.
February.
Yeah.
Okay.
To adjourn.
Hey, I just want to thank you guys,
Motion
and staff, before we do, I just want to thank staff for all the hard work on all these things. I know we get a little crazy up here and cranky and do things, but we really appreciate you, all of you.
Thanks.
So,
Thumbs up.
thumbs up, good job. Yeah,
Keep it up. Keep it up.
And as much as people complain about the cost of affordable housing in Salida, there was an article in the Times on Sunday. What do you think it costs to have one unit of affordable housing built in California?
Oh, I saw that. Well,
It's,
$1.1 million.
it sounds like Aspen. That sounds like Aspen. That's how much it costs.
California.
Billboard
Yeah.
up in Aspen.
Right.
Yeah.
So count our blessings, right?
Yeah.
I move we adjourn.
second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Homer Bush.
I got Bomer Bush.
Okay.
Frozen pizza here.
Oh, yeah. That's about it, isn't it? Oh, my God. We're hungry like this.